Good morning and welcome once again to South Center's Chat. My name is Tom Worley and I am really delighted to have a guest today whose name is David Volkman. And Dave is the Executive Director of the Ohio Hops Growers Guild. And the Guild assists farmers in growing hops and through educational activities, connecting them with microbrewers, helping with the marketing, helping with all the technical side. Our discussion will talk about his involvement with the Guild as well as his own operation down in southwestern Ohio and owning and operating his hops farm along with his wife. And I want to run a short video that was created at a recent hops conference that we had here at OSU South Centers at the end of February. It features Steve Schmidt about growing hops as a value-added business. I think we're ready for that video, and then we'll go back with Dave Volkman as the guest.
We're here at the Ohio State University South Centers, specifically at the Hops Conference and Trade Show. There are a number of vendors, interested farmers, growers, and special speakers throughout this conference. And today we have Steve Schmidt. Steve is with the Schmidt Farms at the New York Hops and Hops supplier. So we'll get into find out more about Steve here in a minute. But he has come to learn and also to be involved with helping other individuals that are wanting to get into hops. So welcome, Steve.
Thank you.
So Steve, tell us more about what your capacity is here at the conference.
Well, we're a vendor here, and we grow hops, but we also design hop yards. So we can sort of talk to our customers and find out what they're looking for in a hop yard, how large they want to go, and then we can design it for them, and then give them a materials list and sort of give them an A to Z line items of what they're looking for and what they need to put together their hop yard.
I think that's very, very important, especially with individuals that are just starting out.
Definitely.
Because you have a lot of experience.
Yes, this is their most important investment is their hop yard, and we want to make sure we can help them to make the right decision and move forward correctly.
Oh, very good, very good. So in your estimation, why is growing hops important to area farmers?
You know, it comes down to money. That's what everything comes down to. They're looking for what can they grow next that can make money.
Yeah.
You know, so they can survive and keep growing their farm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We have a lot of different farmers. Some trying to diversify, some trying to get into it. You know, they're all trying to keep the farm. They're all trying to find out what the next best thing is to grow.
That makes sense. Since you've been involved in both sides of the fence in helping hops farmers with different products and processes, as well as being a hops grower yourself, any words of wisdom you wish to share with the listening audience?
Just do research. Really research the industry. Don't think it's a get-rich-quick scheme. It's not. There's a lot of hard work, a lot of labor hours to make this work, and you have to have passion for it.
Yeah, that's the main thing. Hey, we're talking with Steve Schmidt, Schmidt Farms. They are from New York, in which they help not only in educating individuals that are wanting to get involved with hops, but also they have different supplies, different things that they can assist the farmers. Steve, I want to thank you very much for being involved in this telecast.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're back, and to round out the South Center's Chat today, I'm with David Volkman once again, and Dave appears on the screen at this point. We're using technology this morning via Skype. Welcome, David.
It's good to be here, Tom. Nice to see you.
Absolutely. It's great to you're in the great outdoors with a nice backdrop. We're not used to having that on South Center's Chat, but we appreciate you going to the effort to make that possible for us today.
All right. Just a phone in the hop yard, Tom.
Absolutely, absolutely. Technology is wonderful, wonderful. David, maybe we could start off and maybe you just give a little bit of background for yourself and your farm, and then kind of lead up toward how you got involved in hops maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Okay. When I grew up, my family always had a big garden, and we lived in an area that had surrounded by a lot of farms. I was not a farm kid, but always fascinated by farming and farm equipment. And I actually got some old farm equipment myself. I have a 37 Farmall F20, and I bought my wife a 43 Farmall B, and I got an old corn binder and 4 corn shredders and stuff that we take and show. I'm also a historical boiler operator here in the state. Got a friend with an old A.D. Baker 2390 traction engine that we go thrash with every year. And I've been doing that since I was a little kid, but went on active duty in the Army for a number of years. And when I came back home here, my wife and I bought a nice little place, but had some friends around here who did farm, and I would work for them on the side. I'm a high school teacher by trade, so I had time in the summers, and I spent many years working on big farms with them. He had a big hog operation, about 1,000, 1,200 acres of grain and hay. And at a point there after 9/11, I got kind of busy with the Army Reserve and stopped working for him. But had a little place here. I had some time. So we were growing a little bit of produce on the property. And I went to Iraq in 2010. And when I was in Iraq, I was working, based on what I did in the Army Reserve unit out of Columbus, Ohio there, the 412 Civil Affairs Battalion. And we did a lot of stuff with civilians and to help kind of bridge the gap between the military operations and civilians. And I worked on a interagency team with a guy from USDA and some people from the Department of State and USAID. Well, the guy from USDA used to work at South Centers, a fellow named John Ellerman. I don't know if you were there when John was there.
I know John. Absolutely.
All right. John, I was, kind of complaining about growing produce. It's okay. It's a lot of work and requires attention about every day. And honestly, I was kind of on the lazy side. I was looking for something to do, maybe a little bit better profit margin and better hours, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And John, I'd never heard of South Centers. He said, well, when you get home, go check with South Centers in Piketon. And he told me a little bit about what y'all did. And so I got home, and I did not check right away. I got home in about the fall of 2011 from that deployment, and I was heading it towards retirement in the reserves. So I was looking at what was next to occupy my time, because honestly, that was a full-time job on top of my full-time job, on top of family. So I got invited to a wedding in the Netherlands, and I flew over with my daughter to this wedding. And I said, well, heck, we're in Europe. I wanted to go through Germany. My great-grandfather was from southern Germany. And as we were going down there to fly back home from Munich, I saw all these telephone poles in the ground. What the heck are those things? And I asked a fellow at the inn we were staying at. He said, this is a hop-growing region of Germany. And didn't really anything click there. But I did that probably February or March of 2012. Get on the South Centers website, and I saw this interesting little thing they were going to do, investigating whether or not hops would be a viable crop here in Ohio. And I reached out to Brad Bergerford, who's running that program, and I attended his first ever field night there at Piketon, and I came to a hop symposium at Ohio Brew Week that he put on that year, and I decided that this was worth trying. We put in a quarter acre that first year, and that seemed to go pretty well. So we put in another quarter acre, and that seemed to go pretty well. We put another quarter acre, and that seemed to go pretty well. And put another quarter acre, and so it seems to be going pretty well.
Good.
In terms of looking at my spreadsheet of costs and what we're making out of it. And we're going to put another 3/4 acre in late summer this year. Okay. I already got the ground worked up for it, and we'll do that. And I think I'm going to call it quits there, because it's just my wife and I. 99% of the time. Sometimes I can get my kids, but they're grown. Hard to catch them. So that's sort of my story, Tom.
Wow, that is a great story, and that's a revelation to me that you encountered John Ellerman. I know John very well, and we go back a long, long time. I think you mentioned that your intersection occurred in Iraq. Ellerman and I intersected in Ukraine, of all places, on a project that we were both part of way back in the 1990s. So such a small world. I just have to, amazed at it. But it's fascinating that you got this interest in hops, and by seeing them in Germany, and of course that's a big beer country, and it's part of the culture, and obviously, and many different types of hops, I am told. But it's quite a phenomenon here in our country that the whole microbrewery, craft brewing, home brewing, that's what creates this opportunity for hops here in Ohio, it seems.
Yes, sir. There's just been an explosion of craft brewing here in the country, and it really kind of goes back to about 1980 or so, when I think you could, and I don't probably have my history just right, but Sierra Nevada was one of the early ones, Anchor Brewing out in San Francisco, two of the real early ones, and it's just kind of grown from there. We went through a little bump in the 90s that you may remember. Here in Cincinnati, we probably had 3 craft brewers in Cincinnati, and then it kind of dropped off a little bit there. But and I don't know what exactly happened, but by golly, it really took off starting around a slow incline, probably starting in 2005. But wow, the last 3 to 4 years,
right?
The growth is phenomenal.
Yeah. That's about the time Brad was able to get funding for the projects that we have had underway here at Piketon as well as up at Worcester. And but the interest on the part of farm owners and growers and backyard gardeners is just phenomenal. I've never seen the turnout for these workshops and the conference, as you know, very, very well attended, and just a huge amount of interest, and people taking it very seriously in a lot of cases, going into the harvesters and then the pelletizing that has to take place. Do you want to talk just a little bit about that aspect of it? I think rather than get into the technical side of growing, and I know you want to show us what's going on there in the background, and we're going to be happy to do that, but can you just talk about, from the kind of the harvest through the marketing to the microbrewers, what all happens there, and how do you handle that?
We're starting right now. The hops are just starting to come up right now. They're emerging out of the ground, and they'll grow kind of slowly here. They're looking at sunlight and growing degree days, but they'll really start taking off in June. And we're already making coordination with a couple of brewers for their first brew using our hops this fall. We've had 2 brewers who we've worked with and just who've been real happy with our product, and it's been great working with them. And the first thing that they're going to brew will be called a wet hop or a harvest beer, which is actually going to use the hops directly picked, and it'll go into their kettle within 24 hours of us picking them. That's what normally happens with beer, but that coordination's already beginning. And we're as a guild, we're already starting some coordination with the Ohio Craft Brewers Association to help brewers who want to try that for the first time to start making that coordination now, because it's a timing issue. It's a matter of logistics. They've got a very full brew schedule, and Mother Nature is going to decide when harvest comes in here. And we want to make sure that we're coordinating really well. So that early coordination starts now, but it really tightens up in the month of July as you zero in on harvest time. Harvest on hops is determined by the dry matter content of the cone. And if you've never seen a hop plant before, they grow. It's called a bine. It grows up a string that will. We're about to hang 2,000 strings out here in the yard starting this weekend. We'll train 3 or 4 bines up each string, and they'll shoot up there about 18 feet tall. And on each of those bines, it'll throw off sidearms that'll be loaded with hop cones. And it looks like just looking at it, looks like a little compact inch-long pine cone, but it's very soft. And inside it are little glands of oils and acids called particulate. And it's what gives. If any of you out there listening have ever drank a hoppy beer, that's the smell you get. That's what it smells like out here in the hop yard at harvest time. And so you're looking for dry matter content of that cone of somewhere around 20 to 23%. There's ways that when you get into this, you learn how to measure that. Comes a point, I think, when it's like knowing when hay's dry enough to bale. You can tell by feeling it, looking at it, and smelling it. But there's some technical ways to get it exactly where you need it to be. Harvesting involves cutting those vines down. Out in big commercial operations in Washington State and Oregon, they've got what are essentially combines that'll go through the field. We're nowhere near that size here. We're talking farms out there that are many hundreds or thousands of acres. And most of us here in Ohio are 1 to 4 acres. We've got a young fella in Circleville who's planning on putting in 50. And I've heard some other people talk about 20 acres, but it's a very labor-intensive process to harvest. And we basically come out here with a hay wagon with a scaffold on it pulled behind a tractor, and we cut them off at the bottom and we cut them off the top, lay them on the wagon. You need, honestly, if you're going to do more than, if you're more than a backyard grower, you need to have access to a harvester, which the best I can liken it to is it's a threshing machine for hops.
Yeah.
And, you feed the vines through it, and it's got thousands of fingers on some belts that basically strip all the leaves, all the cones off. Goes through a separator, goes through a screen that's got some vacuum pressure on it to hold the leaves, let the cones go through, and it makes pretty quick work of it. If you were to pick a vine by hand or a string with 3 vines on it by hand, it's probably going to take you 20 minutes to a half an hour, and you multiply that times an acre of hops of 900, 1,000 plants, so 1,800, 2,000 strings. It's not viable. You got to have a harvester.
Yeah.
I purchased a mobile harvester, and Steve Schmidt, who you saw the video from earlier, he's been working with a manufacturer up in New York State, and I've actually got a harvester that Steve helped to design. Does a nice job.
Good.
And there's another, the Hopster 5P, manufactured by a different guy in New York. Several people in Ohio bought those. And then there's commercial size ones. I know of 2 harvesters that are stationary, one up in Wadsworth, one down here in Milford, Ohio, that built by a company called Wolf, that you have to take your vines to them from your farm. And again, it does a nice job. I like the mobile thing for the small grower because I can bring it to your farm. In fact, all of us that own them, we also rent them out to help out other farmers. I can bring this in, pull it up next to your hop yard. We harvest on the spot. You pick them, and there you go. Once they're picked, you got to dry them. If you're not going to sell those hops wet, which it's a very limited demand for that. A brewer's probably only going to make 1 batch of that. If it's 5-barrel, 10-barrel, 30-barrel system. I sold about 150 pounds wet last year, and that was probably at the upper end of anybody in Ohio selling wet hops. Everything else, you got to dry it down. So you have to have a facility to dry it, and to dry them, it's not complicated. It's just you got to get them dry enough.
Yeah.
Mine is I've got perforated harvest baskets. We harvest straight into them. I've built a small food safe room, and I just put them in there, stack them up. Got a small grain fan pulling about 3,500 CFM, and it just move a lot of air through them for 24 hours, just ambient air. That gets them from 80% moisture content down to about 20%, but with high humidity, that's as far as you'll get. But you got to get them to about 8 to 10% to move to the next step. So at that, we shut ours down from ambient air and recirculate dehumidified air. That's probably another 18 to 24 hours, and we get it right where it has to be. We compact them into buckets, 5-gallon food grade buckets. And put them in a cooler until we can get them to a pelletizer. Again, there's a couple people in the state that have pelletizing outfits. There's a fellow in Georgetown, Fort Recovery, New Carlisle, and Wadsworth again that have got some nice pelletizing outfits. Because what a brewer ultimately wants to brew beer is to have those hop cones put through a hammer mill and then put into pellet form, vacuum packed, nitrogen flushed in a Mylar bag that blocks it from any sunlight to prevent degradation. And then we freeze them until we deliver them, and then the brewer can use them at their leisure. At that point, there's a few other things. You got to get them tested for their chemical content,
Mm-hmm.
acids and amino acids, and some other things the brewer wants to know for their recipes.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, really, two things here happen here to make that connection with the brewer. One is, before the guild existed, people were just going out knocking on doors, and the Ohio craft brewers are very supportive of what we're doing. But there's kind of two things that they were looking for from us. One is quality. You got to have a quality product no matter what you're selling.
Right.
And that's I'd like to address in a minute here is what our Hop Growers Guild is doing about quality. But the other thing is for us to help connect them to us. And so we've got a website, and if anybody's out there thinking about growing hops, or maybe you've got a brewer out there that wants to buy hops, www.ohgg.org. That's for Ohio Hop Growers Guild. Makes it easier to type.
Mm-hmm.
And map on there, and we've got a grower map of all of our members,
Mm-hmm.
and it's on the front page, and you can just click on it. It opens up a map, and you can zoom in, move around the state, and see who's close to you. And click on one of those pins. It'll open up contact information. It'll open up what they're growing, how many plants they've got, to give you some idea of if they got something that you're interested in brewing with. And so that helps to connect.
Sure. Sure.
The guild also, we went to their annual conference and trade show the last 2 years and had a chance to speak to the brewers about the benefits of using Ohio hops. And also, we had a booth at their trade show this year. Had a lot of interest from a lot of brewers. So we're working real hard to connect our members with brewers. There's a lot of brewers in the metropolitan areas. Further out you get, it gets a little sparse at this point.
Right. Well, Dave, that's a great overview of the whole operation. And as you've described, there's a bit more to it in terms of preparing for market and really securing a market. You talked about coordinating closely with the users of the hop, those that are going to buy them. And I think you had great experience with that in terms of linking a couple of establishments there in the Cincinnati area right back out to your farm.
Yeah, and it's there's a few to me selling points about using local hops. One is you're getting a very fresh product, and just like craft beer is different than the macro beer, this is craft agriculture, and it's a little bit different than macro agriculture. The product being produced in the Pacific Northwest is world class. I mean, they've got this down. Multi-generational farmers. We're all new at this out here in the state. We've got a number of people growing who've got agricultural experience, but growing this crop, it's new to us. So I'm not knocking the Pacific Northwest at all. But by the time it gets into the supply chain from the Pacific Northwest, I don't know. Some brewers are going to get some stuff that's getting kind of older, and like so many things, the bigger brewers get first dibs on stuff, and they can negotiate better prices. So your smaller brewers have a harder time getting the hops that they want or need, and they also tend to be very, very creative. I'm a big fan of the super small breweries who are super creative with what they do. They're masters at what they do. They're chefs who are working with barley, hops, yeast, and water to make an amazing product.
Wow.
Connecting with them, they get a very fresh product. We've gotten a lot of feedback from brewers that their brew house has never smelled as good as it has when they use Ohio hops, because you get this fresh explosion.
That differentiation really is what having the locally grown Ohio hops in an Ohio-made beer. That's the magic, it seems to me.
Yeah. And that too, the fact there are so many people very interested in where their food came from, local sourcing. My wife and I are big fans of restaurants that do farm to table. The flavor's great. You're supporting your local farmers, and so we've worked very closely with our brewers on that marketing aspect.
Yes, absolutely.
So
I think it's the critical piece before you get a lot of labor and effort into growing the crop, that you know where it's going to end up. Dave, the time has gone so quickly. I can't believe we're down to just about a couple minutes, maybe less. So I give you opportunity to kind of put a pretty bow on this and take us where you want to as far as the guild or the marketing, or if you want to point out that thing in the background is your platform for reaching up to the top of the trellis.
Okay, well, Tom, I'm going to flip my camera around on my phone real quick, so there might be a little lag here.
Okay.
All right. And I'm going to, there we go. See if we're flipping yet. Technology.
Okay. Okay.
Here we go.
We see the back of the tractor.
So I'm going to kind of back off here.
Okay.
And we're getting ready to start stringing. And if you can, I'll get a little bit of a panoramic view here of the yard. So I've got about an acre of hops right here. And you can see there's 96 poles out there and about, probably 1.25 miles of steel cable holding the whole thing together that we're going to string off of. And so my wife will be on the tractor this weekend, and I'll be up on the scaffold, and I've got a bale of string that we're going to hang out there. The plants, I'm going to zoom in here on a hop plant that's coming up. So right here you can see this is what they look like right now. That thing will be about 18 feet tall. It's only 4 to 6 inches right now, but you can see we got drip irrigation out here. They're a thirsty, hungry plant. That's a lot of biomass that they've got to support. And so we just got our soil tested here and got them back, and they do have some. They do eat up the nutrients. So we got some fertilization to run through the drip irrigation.
Okay.
But it's what we're looking at right here. I'm going to flip back my way. Oh, goodness gracious. All right. Get myself, there we go.
Okay.
I'd say my sort of parting wisdom is that you can grow hops. Anybody can grow hops. The things that you really need to think about are the quality of what you're growing.
Yeah.
And that was that thing I wanted to mention. We met when we first formed the Hop Growers Guild back two plus years ago. We met with the board of the Ohio Craft Brewers Association. Our board, which I'm a member, and their board met down. And their number one concern was that they needed somebody to kind of oversee, be a third-party guarantor of quality of hops. Over many years, they've had people who've brought in what we call the proverbial garbage bag full of hops, and they were not up to what anybody would have used.
Right.
So they said, you got to figure something out. So we actually got right to work. We've got a couple of members in the guild who've got a background in quality. We have our board of directors just voted last weekend at our quarterly board meeting to approve a set of best practices that we're rolling out to our membership that if a member can meet them, and they're rigorous, they're achievable, but they're rigorous.
Right.
That we'll put a seal of quality on that, and it's sort of a guarantee to a brewer that grower is doing everything right. In terms of food safety, number one, their practices of fertilization, of record keeping, traceability, and doing the analysis they need to do in the testing. So
David,
we're rolling this out.
I hate to even break in. You're just a fountain of information and understanding and knowledge, and I can tell you're an educator because you've done the homework. You have done the homework, and you're sharing that freely through the Hops Growers Guild and individually, I know. I just want to take time to thank you for this time today. I think you make a great guest, and maybe we'll get you back on maybe at harvest time or in between. But know that we appreciate this today, and we're going to have to sign off South Center's chat. Be sure and check out the Ohio Hops Growers Guild website for further information, and I think there's insight in there about these new quality guidelines that David was just finishing up. So with that, we'll sign off for today and see you on the next South Center's chat.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.